If you're like most people, you probably clicked on this video because of the thumbnail. You're curious. You want to know why I believe that working hospital security is a lot more dangerous than being a cop on the street. Hi everyone, this is Sean and welcome back to my channel. Please press the like button, subscribe, share, comment. I'm always looking forward to the dialogue. So let's talk about my experiences. I worked hospital security about 2 years. That was my secondary source of employment. It's my second job. And I worked at a rather busy hospital. This stuff that I'm about to discuss, you can't make up. I have people who I work with that are subscribers to this channel. When you compare law enforcement to security, there are some similarities. As a law enforcement officer, you may be required to restrain someone. As a hospital security officer, you do the same thing. Now, when I compare both of my experiences in law enforcement and hospital security, I've had to go hands-on more in a 2-year period. I've had to go hands-on more being a hospital security guard than being a police officer in a 2-year period. There's some things that I'm going to discuss, and you'll see that I have a slight emotional reaction to that. Emotional reaction to fear. And you normally don't see me discussing these feelings in these videos. But I want to be honest with you. I want to be transparent. And if you're thinking about working hospital security, then you'll get a different perspective. And if you work hospital security, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Working hospital security, you are hands-on. There's no thought about hands-off. I know a lot of subscribers, there's channels out there that talk about, awesome security channels that talk about observe and report. Usually those who are commenting, and that's a good thing. But when you work hospital security, there's no hands-off. It's all hands-on. You are there to protect the patients, visitors, and staff. That is your job. When a patient goes out of control, you normally don't call law enforcement to help you out. Number one, they're going to take a long time. And number two, they're going to be wondering, well, this is a patient care environment. Don't you have security? So as a security officer, you are the police for the hospital. You got to restrain patients. Guys, I worked at a large facility, large hospital, where there are 2 locked facilities. And we had a geri unit also, geriatrics unit for the elderly who aren't able to take care of the safety of themselves. They can't take care of themselves. They can't bathe themselves. They can't do that as a result of a behavioral health challenge. But we had 2 locked facilities. What that means is we had people in there that were committed because of court reasons, because they were placed on a behavioral health hold in California. We call that 5150 of the Welfare Institution Code. Other states have has a different section. But these are involuntary confined people, guys, past the 3-day mark. Okay, in California, law enforcement can send somebody to a behavioral health facility, and it's a 72-hour hold. You got people in there that are longer than 72 hours. I mean, we had the most notorious people in there, and they don't just have behavioral health challenges. They're on parole, probation for committing violent crimes. And there's a time when you have to restrain them. We had a patient escape. And I thought that he was going to kill me. I thought that rock was going to go right through my windshield. And at that time, I just felt totally helpless. I didn't have a firearm on me. And we were tasked with running after these people. Guys, I was running in the streets of dangerous areas, dangerous neighborhoods where there's constant drive-bys. In a uniform, tan and green uniform, running after this guy that broke out of the behavioral health facility. At that hospital where I work at, if you lose a patient that's on a hold, you can lose a lot of government funding. So the director and the leadership staff, said we're gonna get him. So I went on a full-blown foot pursuit in the meanest streets of this neighborhood. And for a minute, when he was launching rocks, I thought that I was going to die. And I never felt that just helpless moment. When I compare my experiences in law enforcement, I've had similar moments, but it just working private security, your use of force options are so limited, and that's why I just felt that hopelessness. I have fought with patience, and I'm talking about the drag out fight that instructors talk about in the law enforcement academies, talk about on YouTube, that one day you're going to get in a drag out fight with somebody and you're going to have to use these skills to survive. I've been in those fights, and just the power of some of these people when I grab their arm, they're just so powerful, and I just feel so weak. I felt so weak at that time, and I felt so helpless. This guy bit me. I mean, he actually bit me, guys. And even in law enforcement, I've never been bit by somebody before. Why do I feel so helpless? Well, our use of force techniques are restricted to what we taught. If we're in a law enforcement role capacity, you want to bite me, then I am going to start giving you distraction blows in the face so that you can release that grip from my hand. We're going to go full out, and I'm going to articulate everything that I'm doing. In a hospital environment, corporate environment, excuse me, I am restricted to what is taught. And the techniques that were taught were ridiculous. My instructors, and I believe it was nonviolent crisis intervention course that we had to take, and these are techniques we have to use. They even told us, "Hey, man, this stuff ain't gonna work." And they had a law enforcement background, meaning that they've been in a lot of use of force incidents, and they even said that this is not gonna work if you have to go hands-on. These were instructors. As an instructor, you're supposed to adopt the philosophy that you're taught, but they told us on a sidebar, this is not going to work. This is the friendly way of taking somebody into proper patient care. That's what you want to call it. Properly restrain patients. And sure enough, they don't work. So all of the techniques that I previously used in a law enforcement context, I couldn't use in a hospital environment because I'm going to end up getting fired. The baton. We were authorized to carry a baton, but I was pulled aside, "Sean, if you use that baton on a patient, you're going to get fired." It's just for show. It's mainly against unruly guests who become trespassers, but usually against a patient, you're going to get fired. So I end up not even carrying it, because I'm going to use it on a patient. Straight stick baton. I want to carry that. "Sean, you can't carry that. It's too intimidating." Okay, I'm not going to carry a baton at all. So now it's all hands-on. And I like to use weapons so I can gain the upper advantage. Not be equal fights. I mean, you win a fight, a straight fight, because somebody is being unfair. But that's topic of another story. My other fear is this, guys. My backup was obviously other security officers, and I worked with some who were badasses in their previous law enforcement career. You're talking about 30 years, having leadership experience, working in the meanest streets possible that California has to offer. But there's a point in time when you're 80 years old, maybe almost pushing 90, late 70s, where this might not be the job for you. And we've had those officers get badly injured on the job due to assaults. So sometimes that's your backup. You also depend on nurses. Hopefully, guys, I'm not going on a long tangent, but I just wanted to share my experience with you. Nurses, okay? Geez, where do I even start? Nurses are nurses. They're not security officers. They're not police officers. So they expect you to use what's they consider fair use of force. So, for example, we had a 5150 patient escape. She went down the elevator, and boom, the elevator opened up, and I saw her. And she told me something. I don't remember what it was, but she ran off. So I grabbed her, and I shoved her back in the elevator, and I started to put her, and she started fighting, guys. I'm telling you, 130-pound gal who's 5 foot, I mean, just petite, that's powered by rage, anger, and the worst of ideations, is hard to control. It's hard to control, guys. So I was trying to put her under control. I couldn't. Again, she tries to kick me in the groin, scratch me in the eyes, punching, everything, you name it. So I shoved her back. I don't even know if I can say that on camera, but that's what I did. I shoved her back in the elevator. I don't want her to escape and be a danger to herself or others. And then we went on the ground. I started to put her in a control hold that I was taught in the police academy. Guys, the nurse started screaming at me to let her go. I'm gonna break her arm. And I've done this technique dozens of times, and I've never ever hurt somebody. So she started telling me that, and the nurse shoved me away. Like she's saving this patient from police brutality. As you guys who work hospital security or just security in general, who've actually been out in the real world, even law enforcement, you know what happens next. She kicked me, she hit me good. I'm sure you could tell from the frustration, guys. I just wanted to have a polite conversation with this nurse, but I end up just telling the house supervisor, that's the person who's in charge of the hospital at that point in time, and this guy sounded like he was concerned, but in all reality, he's another nurse. Patient care, right? Forget officer safety care, patient care. I just felt like the hospital staff, if you get hurt as a security officer, they just don't care. If their fellow nurse, colleague, or EMT technician, doctor gets hurt, it's a different story. There was a doctor there as well, a very respected doctor. He was on the SWAT team as a reserve officer. So he basically just came out there and was a reserve officer. He was a doctor. You guys know what they're going to use him for already, those of you who are on this channel. Medic. Okay, they're going to use him as a medic. I mean, what better resource is there than an emergency doctor being on your SWAT team? This guy went to war. He went to combat in other places, dangerous places in the world. So he had that combat mentality, which is a good thing. But this guy's ego was up to here. I don't think that he knew that I have a law enforcement background. I don't know if it would even matter. But this guy would challenge patients to fight him. And all the nurses, okay, it's like they're scared of him. I mean, you have a charge nurse, a house supervisor, that don't have the guts to pull this doctor aside and say, look, you need to calm down. Now, those aren't the words to calm someone down. It would be calm the F down. This needs to stop. You're a doctor, and this person is a patient. act accordingly. Now, that's what I wanted to say. Now, if you want to calm somebody down, that's not what you have to say. So I've calmed this doctor down a couple of occasions using the law enforcement buddy system. Hey, doc, don't worry about it. I got it under control. Just don't worry. I got it. I got it. I'll take care of him. You don't have to worry at all. And it worked. And I had to do this on numerous occasions. How the nursing staff? No, they're scared of this doctor. I see where he came from. He saw a lot of violence, and that's the mentality. I mean, he's a SWAT officer. He has that type A mentality. There's a time and place for that, but not at the hospital, guys. That's what we have to put up with at the hospital. Charge nurses, house supervisors, a lot of them are cowards. They are scared to be assertive with doctors. So doctors out there being as arrogant as they can be, they see me every time, but they don't even acknowledge my presence. It's like I'm just another security guard out there. That's how I felt at that moment, guys. Every hospital is different. Every doctor is different. We don't want to generalize them, but that's the kind of experience that you might have. Very, very similar. One other time when I just felt helpless is when we had a guy out there, a former cop, who was actively hunting police officers. And that's the most terrified that I ever been in my life. He was fired by a large police department, and I connected with this guy. And let me say this. I connected with his grievances. He was fired for reporting excessive use of force. Some of these places, during that time, you don't report certain people. If you do, then you can get retaliated against. So I felt like I was connected to him in that aspect, just that aspect. So I understand why he was upset, but he ended up killing 4 people, and I believe 2 of them were law enforcement officers. So I found out the day that I was scheduled to work that he was suspected to be in the mountains of this hospital that services that area. And I just thought something is going to go wrong. I mean, I have, at that point in time in my life, I have a pretty good intuition when something is going to happen. It's I don't want to say it's predicting the future, but I just have this good sense. I want to say it's a bad sense sometimes. I know some of you have the same feeling. I think for me, I think sometimes it's a gift. It's a gift of God to be able to predict some of these things from happening. And I know it sounds crazy, guys. Excuse me if I sound that way. But the feeling was so strong that I prepared myself. I threw on some soft body armor. Nobody wore soft body armor at the hospital I work at. And I put some different, I want to say, objects of opportunity. I had objects of opportunity in the trunk of my car and on me, just in case. I just had a horrible feeling. My stomach just started feeling like it was just turning. What are the chances of him coming to the hospital and taking us out? Well, number one, the local police department would always park in the red zone at the emergency entrance. That already is a target. This guy is driving by, okay, in the area, sees police cars. Let me start taking these guys out. And guys, this guy is a former military and trained excessively at the time in different weapon systems. I mean, he sent a challenge coin that he received from the chief of police when he graduated from the academy back in 2001. He sent that to CNN. And there was a hole in the challenge coin, and it says 1 MOA. 1 MOA. Basically, what that means is at 100 yards, he was able to hit that approximate 1-inch challenge coin that he received from the chief of police. So I started to learn that deputies were on his trail, and again, I just had the horriblest feeling ever. And then I learned that there's a series of deputies that got into a gunfight with him. He hit 2, and 1 detective lost his life during that struggle. Just being in law enforcement, it's just a funny feeling, guys. Knowing that I'm somewhere in that area, and I can't go there and help find this guy, and then knowing that a deputy was killed. That's law enforcement has always been my calling. I know, there's this thing about, you're off duty, but I believe that I just feel like I'm never off duty. So the anxiety of not being able to properly defend myself was just building on for years. And you guys, I'm talking about more than 10 years ago, and you could see it in my face, my tone of voice, that I still have emotional reaction to that incident. And you might also ask, well, what are other chances of this guy coming to the hospital? Well, if this guy is hit by gunfire, okay, and he patches himself up, okay, he administers first aid to himself, he gets away from the crime scene. Well, my hospital security people, where do these people end up at? So after a drive-by, if they get hit, you think they're going to stay at the scene if they're ambulatory? No. They end up driving as far as they can from the scene, and then they check themselves in the hospital. And they'll say something stupid like, oh, I fell on a knife. Or I accidentally shot myself. Just something stupid. Or I was in Mexico, I was in Canada, I was in another country, and I got shot over there. You guys working in hospital security, you know the stupid excuses that they present to you out there. Well, this guy has so much weapons on him. They found him with more firearms. So he's checked into the hospital room. That's a scenario I'm playing out. Still armed. That was going through my mind. And this is basically how terrorism works. You think that something's going to happen to you. And what are the chances of that happening? Now, I always have bad luck, but they're kind of slim to none. Now, this gunfight happened, I want to say roughly a 30-minute drive to this area, this mountain region. But basically, when you come down the mountain region, the hospital is almost in the direct route. At that point in time, when I learned what happened to the deputies, I was hoping that they did not come to our hospital. And that's just because, again, I don't want anything bad to happen to them, and I don't want to see them, because I've seen people die in those hospital beds, guys. I've seen kids. Die in the hospital beds. I've seen crime scenes. After an officer-involved shooting, you see the suspect on the hospital room bed. They have the curtains closed, and you just see blood just dripping down from the bed, from the sheets, all into the floor, just splattering, while a police officer tapes off the room, because it's technically a crime scene, and just guards it. I've seen these things, guys. I asked you guys if you ever had problems sleeping after an incident. uneasy reactions throughout the day after you're experiencing an incident, make sure you go to my community tab on YouTube and see what the results are. See what people are saying. And I want to say about 50% of you guys experience post-traumatic stress. Post-traumatic stress syndrome. Or just, it used to be disorder, but they removed that. 50%. And I want to bet that a lot of those are hospital security guys. Make sure that if you experience something like this, that you get the help that you need, because it doesn't just go away. These traumatic experiences stay with you for a long time. You're talking about more than 10 years ago. I remember the little boy that went in there, and it was like for the flu or something like that. I don't know. He had trouble breathing, but he was fine. He was laughing with his parents, playing with the toys. And then all of a sudden they intubated him, and then they started doing CPR. And I remember praying for this kid, praying that he makes it. Just watching his parents holding his hand, mom and dad just staying there, and then the doctor, the hospital staff. If you got kids, it'll hit you hard. I'm talking about more than 10 years ago, guys. I'm just reflecting on my security career. That's not my law enforcement career. Law enforcement career, I have more to add, but security added. I mean, there's some things, man, in security, hospital security. When I say that hospital security is more dangerous than law enforcement, I mean not in the deadly context. So your chances of dying or getting shot as a police officer in generally most circumstances are greater. However, your chances of being in a physical altercation and being injured are greater working hospital security. That's just my experience. You don't have the same backup. You can't use the same tactics. You have to be patient friendly at times. And there's always that repercussion while you're using force on a patient. Am I going to get fired? Am I going to get sued? And that wears you down a lot. You can't use the same techniques as a law enforcement officer than you would on a patient. I mean, you can, depending on the hospital policy, but generally it's frowned upon. For this reason, I'm still going to say that hospital security, in a 2-year period, I've been in more physical altercations. Let me know what you guys think about this video, and I'm looking forward to the dialogue. Take care.